Good morning. My name is Helen Hyde. I would like to share my daughter Elodie's birth story. So this is Elodie. She is 3 weeks now, and she is baby number 6. And I wanted to share kind of her story. So I was due July 6th, and on July 1st, we decided to go for a walk as a family. So she's baby number 6, the oldest is 8, so they're all young kids. And so the kids went for a bike ride. I decided to do some curb walking, which I had done in my previous pregnancy already, but I hadn't done any of it this time yet. I just hadn't gotten around to it. So I did some curb walking, and as I was curb walking, I told my husband, this is going to do it. I can feel something changed. I'm going to go into labor now. And that was on a Saturday evening, July 1st. And so because it was evening already, we put the kids to bed, and I had a few just kind of cramps, and for some reason I just had a feeling this was going to start labor. I texted my mom to let her know, just to make sure she had her ringer on, because she was going to pick up the kids once I went into labor, and went to bed. I figured I might as well get some rest until I actually went into labor. I woke up at 1:30 in the morning, and I had a contraction in my lower back, which is back labor. I have had back labor before, and both times was in the hospital, and I got an epidural because I felt like I couldn't handle it. I wasn't relaxing in between. So right away I panicked a little bit. I felt like I don't know if I can do a home birth with back labor, because I felt like I couldn't handle it the last 2 times. So I just let my husband know that I felt like labor was starting, but I wanted to take a bath and he could just sleep until I needed him. So I decided to get in the bathtub. I had some relaxing music on, just enjoyed my time with just me and my baby for a little bit. And I wrote down the times every time I would have a contraction, just so that I had an idea of how far apart they were. And when I first got in, they were about 9 minutes apart, but they very quickly got closer together. So by about 2 o'clock, they were 3 minutes apart. And I don't know why I wouldn't have called my midwife right away when they got 3 minutes apart, but I was very relaxed. I still kept thinking maybe this wasn't it. So at 2:45, I got out of the bathtub and I let my husband know that, yep, I think this is for sure labor. So I wanted him to blow up the birth pool. It takes a while, so I wanted him to do it so we would have enough time. And so he asked me how far apart my contractions were, and then I told him they're about 3 minutes apart. His eyes got kind of wide, and he said, well, you better call your midwife. And so I quickly called my midwife, and I told her what was going on, and her too. She's like, okay, I'm on my way. And so I called my mom to let her know to come pick up the kids. And during this time, I was just kind of, walking around, getting the last few things prepared and making sure I had everything in my bin of home birth supplies. And Jake was blowing up the birth pool at this time. So about 3:30, the midwives both got here, and my mom got here shortly after to pick up the kids. So the midwives started setting up all of their supplies, and mom got the kids. They were all pretty much asleep still. They were just excited to go for a sleepover, so they didn't really, I don't think they really processed what was going on. And so by this point, my contractions were getting very, very strong. So they were spacing out a little bit more. They were not 3 minutes apart anymore, but they were very intense. They felt really strong. And looking back now, I remember the same thing happening with the others, where once I got closer towards the end, that my contractions spaced out a little bit more. It gives me a little bit more of a break in between, which I appreciate. So, right when the midwife got here, I asked her to check how far dilated I was, and she said I was about 7 centimeters. And so, they were just setting up their things. Jake was getting the pool ready. And so after the kids were all picked up and everything, it was probably 3:45 or so. And I felt like I was ready to get into the birth pool. So you don't want to get in too soon, but I felt like things were getting so intense, I wanted to get into the water. So I asked the midwife to break my water before I got into the pool. So for me, this is a personal choice for everyone, but for me, I find that once my water is broken, my labor speeds up quite a bit, and I was starting to feel like I wasn't sure how long I could handle back labor with being at home. So I wanted her to break my water. So my midwife broke my water, and she said I was about 8 centimeters at that point. And so after she broke my water, I got into the birth pool. I think I got into the pool about 4:15, and my contractions spaced out quite a bit during this time, which again, it happens for me before I hit transition. Then my contractions kind of space out more, and so I was just relaxing in the warm water. I very much enjoy being in the warm water when I'm in labor, and my contractions started to get really strong. I was starting to moan through my contractions, and shortly after I started pushing, I started to feel like I needed to push, and I think I pushed 2, maybe 3 times, and her head was born. So she actually, her head came out about halfway, and then she kind of stalled there. So the midwife just asked me to shift my position, so I kind of shifted back, and the rest of her head came out. And then I waited for the next contraction, and I started pushing again for the next contraction. It was more like my body bearing down, and she wasn't really moving even though I was pushing, or she wasn't coming out. So the midwife asked me to shift my position again, so I just kind of leaned back a little bit more, and she came right out. And I held her in the birth pool for a while, just relaxed, and I used placenta ease tincture as soon as she was born. I drank that, and then once we could tell that the placenta had released, there's a bit of blood, so we cut her cord once it completely stopped pulsing, and then my husband held her while I got out of the birth pool, and I just squatted down beside the birth pool on a pad and to birth the placenta. And so at first I lost a bunch of clots, and then the placenta just slipped right out, and in total I had about 200 milliliters of bleeding, which is not even a cupful. That was amazing. That's the first time I've had that little bleeding. My midwife was just amazed that it was that amazing, so, or that little bleeding. So overall it went really, really well. I had quite strong after pains after, but that only gets stronger with each baby, so that was to be expected. But it was all just amazing. She was born July 2nd at 4:42 in the morning, so 3 hours since my labor started, and weighing 7 pounds 14 ounces.